In 2006, I was doing a book series based on Edwin Gaines' book, The Four Spiritual Laws of Prosperity. And one of the things she recommends is that people try and go 21 consecutive days without complaining. People say they want more abundance in their life, they want better health in their life, and yet they spend so much time focusing on what they don't want, as evidenced by their complaining. So the idea that I had was to come up with a way to monitor how people were doing on their trek to going 21 consecutive days. And we gave out these purple bracelets for people. And the idea is put it on either wrist, and every time you catch yourself complaining, you take it off one wrist and you switch it to the other wrist. And when you do, you're back on day one, and you switch it back and forth until you go 21 consecutive days without complaining. Well, we handed out 250 bracelets one Sunday, and before the service was over, people were asking for bracelets. They wanted them for their Cub Scout group and for their sports teams and their offices, and all of a sudden people started calling us wanting bracelets, and we hadn't set up any kind of an infrastructure. And so we established the Complaint Free World as a nonprofit organization, and again, people just kept calling and calling. The local newspaper here, the Kansas City Star, did a story about us, which was picked up by McClatchy News Services, which was carried around by 32 different newspapers in the country. It was then picked up by Stars and Stripes, which took it to the armed forces around the world. The Los Angeles Times flew in and did a story about us. George Lewis from NBC saw the Los Angeles Times story. He did a story on us on the Today Show for the first time. From that, People magazine saw us, and they did a full-page story about us. And then the Oprah Winfrey Show saw it, and of course from Oprah Winfrey, then it went out to the world. I got an email from a woman out on the West Coast. She said she wanted to come and see me in Kansas City. She flew here and came to where I was and told me that she and her husband had filed for divorce, and that she then read about the Complaint Free Challenge, and she decided to give it a try, and she simply decided not to complain to him or complain about him. And she flew all the way out here to tell me that it had saved their marriage. They had dropped the divorce proceedings, and they had decided that they were going to stay together, and she said it was like being on a perpetual honeymoon. A company was combining two of their sales offices into one statewide office. And what the managers there decided to do was, rather than trying to get the employees not to complain, the management alone decided to do the 21 challenge. They all got complaint-free bracelets, and they began to support one another in their path to become complaint-free. At the end of the year, they had a record year in sales. Simply because management changed, the people all beneath them sensed the new positive environment, and that got them more excited, and they did better in their jobs. So we were getting close to having the 6 millionth bracelet, and we wanted to give it to someone who had inspired us. And Dr. Maya Angelou's quote, "If you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude," had been sort of our unofficial slogan since we began. And so our board decided that we wanted to give the 6 millionth bracelet to Dr. Maya Angelou. So I started telling people we were going to give the bracelet to Dr. Maya Angelou. I don't know Maya Angelou. I don't know anybody who knows Maya Angelou. And yet I went around telling everybody that that's what we were going to do. I contacted my literary agent. He knew no one who knew Dr. Angelou. I contacted my publisher at Random House. He said they had tried in vain several times to contact Dr. Maya Angelou and couldn't get in touch with her. And yet I just went around and continued to affirm and to tell people we were going to give the 6 millionth bracelet to Dr. Angelou. One day I mentioned to someone that we were going to give the bracelet to Dr. Maya Angelou, and this person happened to say to me, "Tell her I said hi." And I snapped my head around and said, "Do you know Maya Angelou?" And she said, "I used to book her when she was speaking." And she says, "I've stayed in contact with her assistant." So she called her assistant, asked if they would be interested, and I contacted them. And Dr. Angelou was gracious enough to invite her out and allow us to spend the afternoon with her in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, in her home. It was one of those things where we just set an intention and we left the details to God, and it just works.